Hey, what's going on, guys? Dr. Nathan Thompson here. It's been a while since I broadcasted live from the Dr. Nathan Thompson page, but I wanted to come to you and offer you some help, offer you some advice today from an expert who is amazing on helping people with herniated disc, helping them heal naturally. And so we always like to give a lot of value to what we do, whether it's nutrition, chiropractic, exercise, whatever it might be. And so hopefully you guys find a lot of value in this, because I want to introduce someone who has been from like the worst of the worst, who's been through hell and back and has been able to heal and recover from it, and is actually victorious and is no longer suffering like he was before. So we have as our guest today, Dr. Matt Milonas from Milonas Family Chiropractic in Naperville, Illinois. How you doing, Dr. Matt?
I'm good, Nate. Good to see you. Good to hear from you.
That's Dr. Nate.
Dr. Nate. Absolutely.
So I know we talked a little while ago, because I've been through your journey. I know that you've been, in a pretty bad place, and so we talked a lot about your journey. And I know that you're doing a lot of stuff right now, and you're helping a lot of people in the background with their journey, helping them to be able to heal from herniated discs, heal from, just terrible chronic pain. And, and the great thing is you're such a great guy. You meet people where they're at, that you're not affixed to a specific dogma that you must do it this way because it's the right way. Right. But you're using everything possible to help people, get their life and get their health back. Because I know healing from herniated discs, whether it's in the lower back or the neck, can be an absolute, it can be miserable. And I've been there before.
Nightmare. Yeah.
So, hey,
absolutely.
Tell me, because just give us a little background about your story, how you got there and what you're working on, right now. But tell us about your story. I think that you'll tell the story better than me. So tell the story about what happened to you and what you went through, over the course of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think the story is really important, because I think obviously as chiropractors, we're the back guys, right? I mean, obviously we do way more than that, but we're known to be that. And so when we go down with that, it actually, for me, was a little embarrassing at first, because I didn't know what to tell people. But I guess my story started, and I just actually was telling this on a different podcast this morning also, was that I really honestly grew up, I didn't have back issues. I never had back pain. I never had neck problems. I had some other health challenges, but I never, ever would have guessed that what was going to happen to me would ever happen to me. And I would say probably about a decade ago, I can remember wakeboarding and trying to get up on the wakeboard. I'm a terrible water sports athlete. So with zero talent and grace, I can remember my back really wrenching for the first time in my life. And then I just went down that road of every now and then it would flare up. I know that you were intricate in that and would help me through moments, but I never really ever looked at myself as someone with a back problem, just this occasional spasm. And then all that changed on January 10th of 2015. And just so people know, I was under an intense amount of stress. My whole family was at that time, because of just some stuff in our lives. And it's funny because people walk in and I always love to ask them if this current herniation or problem or pain they're going through, if this is a really good time in your life for this to happen. And everybody's obviously answer is no. So under a lot of stress, I woke up on January 10th, and I tell people that this was the most intense pain that I ever felt from my back, shooting down my left leg, like knives being jammed all over my butt, my hamstrings, my quads. But it felt like my leg was not part of my body anymore. And just like a trooper, I tried to roll over and go back to bed because it was early morning. And it was that movement of rolling over that like woke me out of that sleep and told me something horrible was happening. Of course, I've been taught that you just go and do what you got to do. So I did. And I came to the office, I worked on people, and a couple hours later drove home. I had actually lost the ability to stand without pain. And then I realized on the way home, I couldn't sit either without wanting to pass out. And it was a snowstorm, and I kept getting out at all the red lights and closing the door and standing in the snow until the light turned green. I did that all the way home. And the truth of the matter is I really don't know that I left my house much for the next probably 4 months. And I had no idea what I was in store for. I can remember the pain that day being so intense that, you know, people talk about like it hurts so bad that they just wanted to like even die. And you know, before this, I always kind of was thinking, man, they're just being a little dramatic. But the truth of the matter is that's how I felt. And I know that you got involved a couple of days later because I, you know, of course thought, man, I just need an adjustment. I just need to get adjusted. I'm married to one of the world's greatest chiropractors, but I knew that I just needed to get out to my friend Nate, who was just going to, you know, lay a good one on my back and everything would be okay. And I think that you and I both realized once I got to you that something absolutely drastic was happening. I had no idea what I had just done. 17 days later, I finally broke down and threw over the cash for an MRI. While in the MRI, the technician, and this is how I would suggest nobody talk to another person, walks in to someone in intense pain laying in an MRI for 30 minutes already, just trying to get through the tears, and goes, hey, we got to do another one because it looks like you have a huge bone tumor on your spine. So now you go from what am I even going through to cancer, and my mind immediately changed to I'm going to die, and how am I going to tell Jesse? And I actually went and saw her about 30 minutes later with tears in my eyes, wondering if I had cancer. I didn't, but what the call was from the radiologist that afternoon literally went like this: Matt, that is the worst herniation that I have ever seen in 30 years as a radiologist. Good luck. And then he hung up, and he did tell me it wasn't cancer, which was great. So he had no help for me. He had no guidance for me. And I spent the next 3 months piecing together what I could.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you were in that, you know, position and how, you know, bad that it was. And I think one of the biggest things is that like a lot of people don't understand the amount of pain that someone can go through when they're undergoing a disc herniation. And you know, listen, we deal with these things, you know, obviously all the time. And, you know, and here's the thing is, I've been through the same thing, you know, this, and, the amount of pain that you go through is incredible. I mean, it is, it sometimes, you know, with one of a better word, I've been like, someone just put a gun to my head. I mean, like, it's that bad. Yep. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you probably have been, you know, that bad too. But you find it interesting though, is that, you know, a lot of people, you know, how many times did you get the question is saying, well, you're a chiropractor, you're not supposed to have back issues, right?
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is that's absolutely true. I kind of lucked out in a way from that question because I actually didn't really come back to the office for like 4 months until I was like a lot better. Jesse ran everything. But yeah, people on email were like, this isn't supposed to happen to you. Of course, then you feel like the world's biggest hypocrite in that moment. But
but you know, just the nature of what we do, I think that sometimes being a chiropractor, because I've actually added it up, I've adjusted over 200,000 people. Yep. I think the nature of what we do is very traumatic to the spine and nerve system. And we have to work a lot harder than the average person just because of what we do. Because not only are we adjusting people, but listen, we sit too. I mean, we sit and there's other things, paperwork, things like that, and notes, things that we have to do. But it happens to everyone. I know that, like, for me, when I got a first x-ray when I was 22, because I was actually dealing with something that was similar. I had numbness in both my feet. I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit. I would literally go from 3 positions every 20 minutes because nothing was comfortable. And I remember the radiologist sitting me down on the x-ray, and he said, yeah, you got severe disc degeneration. And I'm like, I'm 22.
Right.
How is that possible? Like, and this is actually just hurting me for the first time. And he said, yeah, it's probably started when you were 12. Which, you know, which actually, we're going to talk about this in just a second, about I probably lost the micro motion when I was 12 years of age. Yeah. So I know that, like, for you going through this, and listen, this isn't just like a lower back too. This is the discs are actually, this can be neck, you know, as well. So, and there's people that, you know, are having issues in through the neck too. The principles, even though the application may be a little bit different, the principles of it are the same. So I know that you suffered for a long time, but, you know, we talk a lot about physical stress, mental stress. We talk about chemical stress. So tell me, you know, in just a couple of minutes, how you work through all three to actually get to the process of healing, you know, without having surgery. Because I know, I'm sure that was on the table at one point.
Yeah. So the minute that I found out that it was what they call a ruptured or sequestered disc, And I learned a little bit more about what it meant through the radiology report. Mine actually blew up, literally ruptured, and the fragments had wrapped themselves around nerves and through canals and all kinds of stuff. I was actually a questionable surgery to a few surgeons, because I'm not going to lie, like when you're in that much pain, as much as I'd like to say that all I did was kept telling myself, I'll just do this thing naturally. I wasn't sure, man. And there were moments where I can remember my mother-in-law screaming at me to just take some freaking Advil so I could finally sleep. Because I remember probably it was a good 5 to 7 days before I had even slept for more than 1 hour. So in my mind, once I figured out what it was, then there was no rock that I was going to leave unturned to figure this thing out. And surgery was still on the table. It was about getting my life back. In fact, I remember you and I having a conversation about it when you saw the report, like maybe surgery is the way to go. And I'm not here to say it's not. It might be. Listen, if your bladder doesn't work, and I'm consulting with people all the time who can't go to the bathroom and have cauda equina syndrome, things like those are emergency situations where that disc is interfering with organ and problems and causing failure. That is a perfect moment for you to consult the surgeon. For a lot of us, though, what happens simply is just over time, we lost the ability to heal. So I'm laying there not knowing what to do. And of course, the first thing I'm going to do is handle this chemistry, because pain mechanism is really nothing more than chemicals. The only reason you feel pain is because of a chemical. Immediately, you got to ask yourself, then what am I eating? How am I drinking? Like, what am I doing to create chemistry? So I knew I needed to change that right away. The second was, I'm not going to lie, I started popping Advil. But the third was, I knew naturally I couldn't, and my liver and my gut couldn't handle everything. So we started with essential oils and moved on and on. I'm not, and you know, man, like down the road, there were some moments where I had to add hydrocodone. I even had an epidural from the chemistry side, because, you know, here's what I learned through this whole process. There's a time and place for everything. So we can hound people about why they have to do it naturally. And we can even, you know, make fun of and shame people for having to go those routes. But there is nothing shameful about you being there for your family, and you being able to run your business, and you being able to sleep, and you being able to hold your kids. And so I handled that. The second thing I did was emotional. And honestly, it was probably 3 months until I was emotionally healthy. I mean, I just was mad at everything, mad at God, mad at everybody. I knew that innately, like everything was going to be okay, but like I just couldn't feel it. And so I've really learned that this whole idea of like, you know, praise and give worship and do all those things through the valley, it's hard. And I didn't do it well. And I probably did it the right way for me. And so eventually I realized that I had to control my mind and start to know that I was going to get better. And actually that emotional side changed for me the day I met with a surgeon who looked at me and said, "Hey, suck it up, Buttercup. You're going to be okay. You'll need like 3 more months." And that set me free. And you know, my mother-in-law was in the room with me, and she'll tell you how my entire demeanor changed when an expert told me I would be okay through all the pain. But I think the biggest one that I think people miss is this physical side, because everybody's always looking for this drug or this chemical or a supplement or whatever. And everybody's okay with, you know, understanding I got to be more positive. But this physical side was everything. And actually, you started that process for me. Because when I showed up for my adjustment with you, you actually did nothing that I wanted you to do.
Yes, right.
Because I was laying on that table like, will you just pop this? But there was something that you knew without knowing that what was going on. I hadn't had an MRI. I know you took some x-rays. My x-rays weren't horrible, but I know there was something you knew. And since then has been dubbed, I don't know if I made it up or not, Dr. Nate, but I call it micro motion. It's this idea that I learned that my herniation was the result of me losing my spinal movement and alignment over the course of my life. So I can remember going to the chiropractor with my parents when I was little, and nobody ever looked at my spine. I started having some health challenges in my knees when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I had x-rays in my spine. Nobody bothered to tell me that they sucked. And nobody bothered to tell me that while I could touch my toes and I could bend to the right and left and move my head around, that meant absolutely nothing to the smallest movements that we require in these spinal segments to protect our discs and our nerves. And so when this thing exploded, it was a sign to me that I had not taken care of my spine and my nervous system the way that God intended for me to move for all those years. And we know now scientifically that you cannot herniate a disc unless your spine has already sucked. And I tell that to people because I want them to know that if your spine sucked and now you herniated your disc, what would happen if we got your spine to begin to move correctly again? That was the physical journey that I went on. You helped me, Jesse helped me, learning outside of things, and now what we're doing with people here in the office.
Yeah, I think what you just said is so important because really, you do have to address all three, and this is one of the things that we talk about in our office at Exemplify Health Center, and is although sometimes like people just think that like what supplement can I take to help my disc, or is there an oil to help with the disc, and like thank God that there's medication out there and that there's surgeons out there, things like that. They're the fire department. They are the fire department. But even if you are taking medications, or even if you have had surgery, the thing is where's the carpenter that's going to rebuild you afterwards? And that's the problem, is that they're just left with nothing afterwards. But I think obviously handling the chemical, you got to handle the chemical and the inflammatory component of it. Yep. You have to handle the emotional, because when you're in chronic pain, man, is that an absolute stress on your adrenal glands. When that happens and you see like your cortisol going out of control, I mean, that is going to lead to not very good tissue repair, and having a chronically elevated cortisol is going to just keep destroying the soft tissues, especially. And that disc is a soft tissue, but you had actually said micromotion. Yeah. Which is really, really, really important, because the first thing that you need to get back is you need to be able to nourish those discs. Right. And if without proper motion, those discs, micro motion, like normal motion at each segment of the spine, that disc is the ball bearing that the spine is actually bending around. And when you start losing that motion because of injury, because of misalignment, because of chronic inflammation, that disc starts to do what, Dr. Matt?
Well, number one, it can't eat. It dehydrates, it thins out, and it has to go find somewhere else to go, hence a herniation and a bulge. So you lose that micro motion, you might as well just get ready for your herniation down the road, because it literally cannot work right anymore. And the body's never going to make a mistake. So it's always going to do something to protect itself. And unfortunately, disc herniation is one of its ways of doing that. And I tell people this all the time too. If you don't get that motion back, then the disc can't eat. And if the disc can't eat, then the disc can't rise. And if the disc can't rise, you can't unpinch the nerve. And if you didn't unpinch the nerve, you're never going to heal. It all comes back to restoring that micro motion. And in this office, it's the very first thing we do. I mean, if someone's bad, we're going to address the chemistry and try to get them the inflammation help right away to help them with pain. But if we're not going to restore that micromotion, we lose. That is the number one reason too, when I consult with people who've already had surgery. They had surgery, they felt better, they did 4 weeks of PT. Nobody touched the micromotion, so the rest of the disc finds its way out the same way it did the first time.
Yep. So what you're saying is even if you've had surgery, you still need to get the micromotion back.
Yeah, absolutely. You go do one way or the other. Why not try it first?
Yeah. So tell me about how you, and I have a good idea how we do this, but tell me from your perspective, how you start to reestablish micro motion back into a disc to allow it to be able to eat, to be able to heal. Because the only way it's going to heal is to get new nutrition into it. Right. The only way to get nutrition is through motion. Yeah, motion. So what are the top 3 things that you do to make sure that the disc is actually able to eat?
Well, the very first thing that I'm going to do when someone walks in is understand that less is more right now for them. Less is more. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of great practitioners out there, and someone walks with a herniated disc, they're not likely ready for a traditional adjustment, because that traditional adjustment not only is a lot of stress on the body, it's going to create more inflammation. We're going to go less is more. And like, this is one of the things I learned from you. One of the things we have to do is use very small movements to that joint where the disc problem is and above and below to just get those to move. We use our tool called our arthrostim to just grab onto each joint and gently begin to move it. And I tell people, likely, this is all we're going to do for the next month. But that's so that's really what happens on my table. We do some stretching. We do some using the core stimulator, do some intense massage things to break up some patterns. But the other thing I tell people absolutely is there's this $10 thing on Amazon called a wobble disc. And I know that I didn't want to do it when you came in and you're like, dude, I am not touching you until you wobble. And so just by getting those hips or getting that neck back and forth on this little instability ball, those little movements between each vertebra begin to come back to us. How do we do that? Look it up. There's plenty of ways to do it. You have videos on it. I have videos on it. But the thing is that you have to do it. You do it through the pain. I'm sorry, but you do. You do it through the pain. And then I think the last thing that we have to do with people is understand that, global movement is not okay at this point. We have to stay small. So the stretching that we do, the preparation before the adjustment that we do to create imbibement, through traction, all these things need to stay within that little joint, not thinking big yet. That happens once we see scans change and feelings change and motion come back. Now we can get into traditional spinal repair, correction, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think that's good because you don't want to do too much. So what you're saying is you don't want to do a ring dinger on people, right?
Man,
I know this.
Yeah,
hey,
I know.
So take me to because I know that you've done a lot of things, chemically, and you've also done things, mentally, things like that. I know we want to just really focus on what you need to do with the physical. So, arthrostim, core muscle stimulator, doing wobble just to get, some of the motion back. So really what you have to do is you have to get motion back. That's it. The worst thing that you can do is just do nothing and just hope it goes away. Exactly. Which is tough for people to get their minds around, that you actually need to start moving, even if it's just obviously just a little bit. So, hey, this happened to you 4 years ago. Tell me where you're at right now, and tell me what you're able to do now. Yeah. And then tell me what you need to do in order to make sure that, obviously, because I saw your post MRI, and I mean, the body took care of this. And then, so tell me, where you're at, what you're able to do right now, and what you're focused on to make sure that for you, even as a practitioner, that this isn't coming back.
So I'm not going to lie, that 6 months after it was hell. It was, I don't wish it on anybody. And when people walk in, I'm like, I wish I could take it from you and put it back on me, because I know I made it through once. I could do it again. They don't know that it's ever going to end. It was hell, but it did end. But what was funny is when it ended, I was left really with not that much, because I didn't really know what to do next. And what's really funny is I was actually scared to go back to working out, scared to get back into things. But a friend said to me, he said, listen, dude, if you really want to get strong again, you're going to have to learn how to deadlift. That set me up for a ton of research, because I was like, deadlift? I'm never going to lift anything off the ground ever. And now you're telling me I got to go back to Olympic style lifting. But when I dug into the science, and you understand that once you start to feel good and get your motion back, if you don't retrain your neurological patterns, you are screwed in the future. And so one of the things that I started to do, and I'm not going to lie, it took me about 18 months to get back to it, just psychologically, is I knew I had to retrain my deadlift, and I knew I had to retrain my back squat. And so what I did was actually hired an Olympic lifting coach to come to my house. Now, if people can't afford this, they can go to the gym. And you and I are in love with CrossFit. That's what we do. In fact, that's where I'm headed after this. But I spent a good year with him. The first 90 days was just a PVC pipe and an empty bar. The reason why is when that disc herniates in your neck or your back, it shuts down your neurological connections. No longer does this have the ability to tell what muscles to fire when through the normal motions of a spine. You watch a child squat to the ground, you have to get back to that, because that was part of the reason you herniated, is you lost that. The back squat and the deadlift retrain that. So I knew, one, I had to rehab my spine through proper corrective chiropractic. So I'm still doing that. Number two, I knew that I had to retrain my spine. I've chosen to do it through CrossFit. I'm a huge proponent of CrossFit done right with great coaching, as you are. And then I think just, nourishing cells, eating right. It's not hard to understand, but the one people have to get through their head is they're going to have to go become athletic. And they don't like it because they want to sit around and do nothing. And instead, I'm going to push you now so that you don't end up back here with another bad problem.
So what you're saying is you need to become a different person that got you into the problem in the first place.
Yeah, you got to change. You can't go back to who you were. That's how you re-herniate. That's how people end up on disability and in wheelchairs.
I find it amazing that when people have this, they become very scared, and they actually start to shrink back, and they start to become less, which then makes their problem worse.
Yep.
And so this is actually what happened to me, because I mean, I had a really bad injury at 22. And actually, probably about 2 years ago, I kept re-injuring it to the point I spent about 12 to 18 months feeling really miserable, really, really miserable, and just, a lot of chronic pain. And a lot of it at that point, a year and a half ago, was actually mostly I just was so under recovered. I was actually doing too much. I was too stressed out, and having all of that mental stress and all that kind of chemical stress was breaking down my tissues. I know, actually, for me, one of the things that has changed me the most, because I've always gotten adjusted and always done that stuff, but from a chemical perspective, is knowing how to lower inflammation inside the body, and actually knowing how to change what you're eating. So, which is actually what I've done, knowing for me what was causing a lot of inflammatory issues. And gosh, it's been 9 months now, and I haven't had dairy, eggs, certain specific nuts. And but the pain levels have gone obviously way down.
And that's really what you've become the master at, because I've watched you, and I think that everybody should follow this page and take advantage of what you do, because once you retrain stuff, the bottom line is that your conscious brain is meant to handle your emotional state. Your subconscious handles your body. Yeah. With herniation people, you've switched it, which is why you can't get over inflammation. But once you start to, one of the things that I think is great that you're doing is the blood work and the urine, like just the hormones, because we've just created so many bad patterns that just testing alone is so fantastic. So you can figure out, what do I have to get to and what do I have to avoid so that great things can now happen. Mm-hmm. I commend you in that, because I've watched you go through it.
Yep. So what are you able to do now? Tell me something amazing that you can do.
The best fitness of my life. It's wonderful to go in there and set new personal records on lifting and my endurance and the things I can. The one goal that I have that I haven't been able to accomplish yet is beat my wife at any workout. So I'm still working towards becoming that level fit. But I can tell you this, what's next is that I just decided that it's time to tell the world the story with 1,000 examples of what people can do, because they're willing to uncover 3 and say, I tried. Mm-hmm. And so this chiro, this micro motion inflammation, this is where it starts, but there's so much more. And I just feel like at about to turn 45 years old, probably the fittest I've ever been, the best I've ever felt.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing that people need to realize is that it takes time. It's not going to happen. You didn't get sick overnight, and it's not. You're not going to get better. Right. However, you will always get better if you do one thing. If you refuse to give up, and you just obviously keep going. So I know that you have a podcast. The podcast is. Let me see.
It just launched on iTunes in the next couple of days. It's the Pain Sucks podcast. I'm uploading everything to YouTube right now, and going from there. So with all of our show notes and resources.
So you have the Pain Sucks podcast that's going to be up on iTunes. And let me see if I can bring that up. I can show you guys a picture of it. Yeah. It's going to look for it on iTunes. And you can see this right here. I'll give you there.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. Pain Sucks podcast going to be on iTunes. And then I know they're going to be coming out with a book, correct? Right?
Yeah. Got an ebook about what we've talked about today and more. Probably be a couple weeks, and then we'll just post it online. Not asking anything for it. Just want people to learn.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anybody's going through this neck pain, chronic back pain, disc herniations, and things like that, what would you tell them? What is the first place that they can start?
The first thing you got to do is tell yourself you'll get better.
Yeah.
You may not believe it, but rely on the people who have. Start watching stories of people who got better, and then start piecing this thing together a little bit at a time. Reach out to some experts on this micro motion inflammation. But the most important thing is you never let anybody tell you that you can't heal.
Yeah,
you can.
Yep. So if people need to get in contact with you, what's the best place that they can actually get in contact with you?
Yeah, perfect. Just Matt at MilonaSchiropractic.com.
Matt, I'm going to actually write this on here.
Yep.
And we'll put this up as a comment.
Cool.
And so that way people can actually see it.
Love it.
And so hey, it's been real.
Had a good time, Dr. Nate.
Yeah. So hey guys, if make sure you guys share this with other people who are going through this. And they're going to find tremendous benefit from doing it. But make sure you like us. If you're watching this on the replay as well, just go ahead and make sure that you type in replay so that we know you guys are going back and watching it. But please make sure that you share this. We have an opioid epidemic, don't we? Oh, my goodness. And this is actually one of the reasons why is because we are not handling these correctly, and we are destroying people's lives by not getting micromotion back in and just not being educated about it. So any last words, Dr. Matt?
Oh, man, let's just go help people.
Yep, I'm going to do that this afternoon. But for right now, I have to go help move. And you're welcome to help me on Friday, okay?
I don't think so.
All right, not a problem. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us. Dr. Matt, thanks again. And we will see you guys soon, all right? Be well.
Yeah. Bye.